Hey folks, welcome back to Naz Life, mixing you another lively podcast from the family of Nazarene Missionary Baptist Church. We're so glad you're joining us as we explore topics, ask questions, and get real about the Christ life we've been dying to hear about. Get comfortable in your seat because this is Naz Life with your host on his post, Larry A. Rasco Sr.
Hello, my name is Melanie Preston, and I am the owner and clinical director of Matter Focused Counseling, which has a home base in Evansville, Indiana, and also has a location in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And I am a licensed mental health counselor, Christian, wife, mother, all of those things. And I also have one of my colleagues joining me today, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. It is just so good to be here. I am Michelle Jackson, and I am in Las Vegas, also a licensed professional counselor. I did get trained into some of my training in Indiana, and now I'm here in Las Vegas. Been here for about 3 years, and I'm a clinical director currently at a behavioral health agency. But I also have my own practice where I'm doing primarily online therapy. And it has been a crazy year for mental health and all of us clinicians, that we've been working to help our clients the best we can, as well as trying to keep ourselves sane. And I don't know if Melanie has experienced the same thing, but it's been quite a year. And so I'm really glad to be here with my colleague today, discussing mental health and especially as it relates to church. Both of us are licensed ministers as well. On top of that, so I'm going to turn it back over to Melanie and let her lead in.
So yeah, I completely agree, Michelle, with what you're saying. I think on my end, in dealing mainly at this point with couples and women,
Mhm.
we definitely have seen the uptick in mental health. And so just kind of starting out, because we are talking about mental health and church, mental health and faith. And
Right.
and to be honest, when the topic was brought to us, um, there were certain things, there were certain buzzwords, there were just certain stigmas that automatically came to mind. So when you hear mental health in church or mental health and the faith community,
Right.
what is it you think? What do you think of?
Well, and certainly not just among the African Americans, but I'm familiar with us,
Hmm.
and so often we think of, well, there is a stigma associated with it. Like, first of all, I don't want to be called crazy, so I don't want to get a diagnosis. I don't want to see anybody that may officially diagnose me. And then secondly, why do I need counseling? Why do I need help when I have the scriptures, when I have church, when I have, people that I talk to at church? And so I don't really need any other professional help, nor
Right,
should I need this. And it is almost embarrassing as as a person of faith to have to ask for help.
right.
And so that's some of the issues that we face in the faith community about the idea of mental health or mental wellness
Hmm.
or mental illness.
Hmm. Absolutely. We have those stigmas. I was reading because Mental Health America each year, for about the last 7 years, they have done this report called The State of Mental Health in America. And they just released the report for 2021. And, even in that report, it talks about how at this point, right, that we're over 47 million adults alone, that are experiencing a mental health challenge. And I don't even want to say a mental health illness,
Right,
because
right.
again, we're talking about stigma.
Right, right.
And I think it's very important that just kind of from the beginning, and as we set the tone, that it is understood that our mental wellness is just as important as our physical
Absolutely.
wellness, right? So it may not be an illness, but 47 million, over 47 million adults
Yeah.
have or are experiencing a mental health challenge. Not to mention that we're at over 2.3 million youth. And so when we're
Yes,
talking about youth, we're talking about anyone who is 18 and under.
yes, yes.
Right.
And I just, less than an hour ago left a group of young children. Well, they range from, I want to say, 8 until maybe 15, that we're all experiencing some challenges, and especially within the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're at home all day, and they're
Absolutely.
not even getting to get out and get with friends. And a lot of, some schools are starting to open back up again, but this whole year has been a huge challenge for them, not only facing the issues that were already facing, but now doing that in the sense of a pandemic, of being at home and being with people that don't normally, they're not normally the educators for them, but
Mm-hmm.
having to take on all these new roles and having to be at home. We've seen domestic violence go up, and we've seen some other challenges go up with the children. But the amount of sadness and anger that some of the children are experiencing right now it's very daunting, and
Mm-hmm.
especially among our children.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's just it's really sad, as
Mhm.
you've stated, because here's the thing: if there are 47 million adults
Yeah. Yes.
and there are 2.3 over 2.3 million youths,
Yes.
right? That's roughly, I believe, 1 in 6 individuals, 1 in 5, 1 in 6 individuals.
Hmm.
If that's the case, then surely there are some of us at church.
Right, you would hope so. You would
Because
hope we're in church.
the statistics does not dilute or does not delete Christians, right?
Absolutely,
This is
absolutely.
just within the world, within our life,
Our
within just
society.
within society. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if 1 in 6, 1 in 5 people have or are having a mental health challenge, the reality would be that when we are attending service,
Yes.
be it bedside tabernacle at this point,
Yes.
or pre-pandemic, or even after when we get back into the sanctuary, for those of us
Absolutely.
who are not back in our sanctuaries yet,
Right, right.
there are realistically people who are sitting on your row. Like if you look, you know how we do as preachers, look to your
Right.
left, look to your right.
Exactly.
There are people that are sitting to our left and our right that are experiencing this elephant in the room that we don't
Yes.
want to talk about,
Right. And
right?
not only to our left or to our right, but in front of us,
Oh,
in the
come
pulpit.
on.
you know,
Oh, come on.
absolutely. So even some of the very people that we want to go to for help,
Oh my gosh.
they themselves,
Yes. Yep. Mm.
are experiencing some challenges.
Yeah. That is good, and that is relevant because mental health does not have a name. It doesn't have a face. It doesn't have a
No,
color. It doesn't have a race. It doesn't have a socioeconomic status,
right.
right?
And it
It's an
doesn't
equal,
discriminate.
it does not discriminate. It is an equal opportunity employer.
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
and so as we look, at mental health and what it looks like in church and what it looks like in the faith community, I know that a lot of times in just practice, the main symptoms or the main health challenges that we tend to see are depression and anxiety, right? And so, I know with depression, when we talk about just kind of the symptoms of that, depression is considered to be a mood disorder, and I know, we both kind of deal with that in our everyday practice. And I don't know about you, but my reality has been I am seeing a lot more individuals who are simply depressed. They've never been diagnosed previously.
Right.
They've never needed a medication.
Yeah.
But due to the pandemic, due to grief, due to
Isolation.
loss, yeah, due to isolation, people who have never experienced it before are experiencing depression, and if we really look at the definition, it's described as this persistent feeling of sadness and
Right.
loss, right?
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think, go ahead.
I was going to say beyond the just a normal feeling of
Right.
sadness, or yeah, a normal feeling of uh, wanting to isolate or feeling a little down.
Hmm.
Clinical depression goes beyond that. I mean, you're going to have several symptoms associated with that,
Hmm.
and it over a period of time
Right.
is when, yeah, there's a clinical diagnosis. But you were just talking about how so many people right now are experiencing that have never, they wake up, they're like, what is this?
Hmm.
Why can't I get out of this? Why do I have low energy? Why do I have no desire to do anything? Why is my appetite off? I'm
Hmm.
either eating too much or eating too
Or
little.
eating too little. Right.
What is happening to me? And, some of it is, I don't want to get too technical, but there's a chemical, thing that goes on because God naturally designed us. I mean, this body it is fearfully and wonderfully made.
Absolutely.
And, but there are chemicals in our brain
Hmm.
um, that work to make us feel good, help to make us feel good and at ease and calm us and happy.
Hmm.
And then there are chemicals, that work the opposite of that. And sometimes there can be over time from a number of different things. We won't get all into that, but that cause these chemicals to become imbalanced.
Hmm.
And it can create that feeling, those symptoms related to depression, and also some physical challenges and other things. But
Hmm.
what are you seeing? You're saying you're seeing more of that. Are you seeing it more in both men and women, or children? What are you
I'm seeing
noticing?
it in men and women, and so definitely I think a lot more with women, because there's a lot more pressure with working from home and
Mhm,
still being mom, and the
mhm.
thoughts of, am I doing this right, am I not doing this right? Then there's also, if you have a spouse, oh my gosh, my spouse is getting on my nerves. And now, I have women tell me all the time, I used to be able to go to the gym and that was my outlet,
Right,
right? And we
right.
know that, of course, physical activity, it helps
It does
increase
help.
those endorphins that give us that feel good feeling, right?
Exactly.
And if we're not getting those endorphins, then the negative ones, they keep adding up. And I
Right.
think it's important for people to know that when we say persistent and when we say over time, this is something that slow walks you down.
Exactly.
It,
That's a
it
good way to
may,
put it.
right. It may start as slight disappointment.
Hmm.
And then we never deal with the slight disappointment.
Hmm.
And then over time, it gets into, because we have suppressed that, then
Right.
there's more disappointment, or
Hmm.
there are more challenges that happen, and we don't deal with those because guess what, we're this strong people, and
That's right.
that's how we have been trained, especially in the Black community, to behave,
To stuff it down
stuff
and
it
move
down,
on.
we don't cry about it, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, and you keep moving. But it
Right.
doesn't, but the body absolutely keeps score.
The body keeps the score.
The body keeps the score.
It
And when it
does.
tips over, that is when depression becomes this persistent state, right? This is when you can't get up and function the way you normally would.
Right.
That would be the difference if people are wondering. It's not the natural just sadness, right? I'm sad
Right.
today,
Right.
but this is at least 2 weeks, right?
Right.
So clinically, once we're at a 2 week period,
Right.
then we're talking about maybe a depressive episode.
Right.
And
Right.
that's when the bells start to go off on, what, I'm not able to function like I normally would. I
Yes.
can't pull myself out of this funk.
Right. And some things are suffering because of it. Not only me, but some other things that I'm responsible for are
Hmm.
suffering because of it. And sometimes it comes out also as anger, right? I mean, it goes from, then individuals start to lash out at other people. And
Hmm.
so if you see that in yourself, like my temper is really short here lately,
Hmm.
that may be a sign of depression as well. Um, so one of the things that I really been looking at is, how do you stop that? Like, okay, you talked about it's not, maybe it's not persistent yet. Maybe you've gone a week and you're feeling this way. What's one of the things that you would tell your clients to do, like pretty quickly when they're starting to feel that way? What are some of the things that they can do?
I think, first of all, you have to acknowledge it,
Okay,
right? When we talk
absolutely.
about when we talk about um, that life and death is in the power of the tongue,
Right.
right? A lot of times we don't even acknowledge. We
Yes.
don't get it out,
Yes.
right? And because we're not getting it out and we're keeping it in, we're not acknowledging.
Okay.
You can't get rid of or work through what you're unwilling to acknowledge.
Exactly.
So
If
I
you
have to
don't.
first of all be able to say, I'm not okay.
Exactly.
I'm
And
tripping.
be okay with saying, I'm not
I
okay.
am not okay. Like you said, I'm lashing out. I know this is not me. And when you recognize those things within you that are not your natural character, you have to stop and think, hey, okay, this is not okay. And maybe at a week into it, maybe
Mhm.
that's not when you're ready to go and sit with a professional, but,
Right.
but at least be able to say that out loud and
Yes.
share it with someone you trust.
Exactly. Exactly. You can have that conversation with yourself. That's a good place to start is, okay, I'm doing this, and I
Mhm,
said this, and really to acknowledge it to yourself, but then
mhm,
also that other confidant that you have, that person, that friend, you know, even the dog, man, he'll just
mhm.
listen.
Exactly. And it's not even about sometimes having somebody to answer or try to give you a solution, but it's about
Exactly.
being able to get it out and acknowledge it and have someone just be there to support you,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know. And as you're moving through it, then being able to realize when it's getting to the point that you are no longer able to manage it on your own.
Right, right. And what do you think about, medication? Like we'll take medication for like a number of things. I mean, if I got a cut up, I may put some Neosporin on. And, I'm not necessarily, always an advocate of psychotropic medications.
Mhm,
But what do you think about that? And do you think that, the scripture is okay with that as well?
mhm. So, I agree. I I am not one who is just gung ho about someone being on medication.
Hmm.
However, there is a however.
Hmm.
There, I believe there are oftentimes, depending on severity
Yes,
of the case, severity
yes.
of symptoms, sometimes we may need medication just to be able to function well enough to
Hmm.
learn the proper tools.
Right.
You
Right.
know, and
Right.
we can't look at, I would never tell a client to look at medication as if it's the only option,
Right.
or that
Or
it
the
is
whole option.
permanent, right? It is, for me, it's not the permanent option, but it
Hmm.
is sometimes absolutely necessary, um, to be able to talk, right? Because I have known people who have been in such a state of despair,
Hmm.
be it
Sure.
grief or going in with that depression. It starts out maybe as bereavement or whatever, and it goes into this deep despair,
Hmm.
right? And the medication was needed to function daily and to be able to even sit in a therapy session and learn the tools.
Focus long enough, because remember
Right.
we talked about these chemicals in our brain, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
serotonin and the dopamine and some of those
Hmm.
other things, and what some of the medication can do, like you said, for more severe cases, or when an individual cannot really function well enough to sit in and learn some
Hmm.
skills.
Because if
It
you're
can,
crying through an entire session, there is absolutely nothing we can do.
exactly, we're not doing anything. So it can help, and so we just want to put it out there. We're not, we are our field. We
Yeah,
don't
absolutely.
use medication. I mean, we teach skills, and we listen, and we try to get to the bottom of things, but we don't prescribe medication. But we do know that there is a place for it,
Absolutely.
for many clients, and
You
that's
know,
nothing to be ashamed of.
here's the deal. You can be on medication for your hypertension,
Right.
and the doctor will say, now if you do X, Y, and Z,
Right. You won't need the
you
medication.
won't need this medication anymore. You are a pre-diabetic, so maybe you have to do certain things. Maybe you have to take this medication. However, if you do A, B, and C, then we can decrease that amount of medication. But it's
Right.
all in being able to balance it as we're on the journey. And so
Right.
sometimes the medication helps the journey. There,
Right.
there are often, parents, when it comes to dealing with kids. And I know we're not really talking about um, ADHD or attention deficit or behavioral
Right. Right.
challenges, but a lot of times, we are just, it is an absolute no, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want my kid, or I don't want my mate to be on this medication, with no thought that, if Kevin can't sit down, then Kevin can't learn how to read this chart and learn this behavioral chart. Because
And Kevin's going to get more frustrated and more angry, and more people are going to be telling him to sit down or behave. So he's getting more negative intervention and interactions than positive.
absolutely. I know we're getting close to our time for this segment, but I was reading this research article that Lifeway Research published in Christianity Today, several years ago, and un- and just not even necessarily surprisingly, but what the data found was that only 7% of pastors talk about mental health on a monthly basis, like 1 to 2 times a month. Other than that, 92% said that it's a once per year or a rarely or never situation in which they are talking about mental health in church. You know, um, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think mental health goes right with spiritual health, right? I mean, we cannot be strong in our spiritual faith and walk and knowledge, and not understand how the mental aspect works with it. I mean, our mind has to be clear to get a full understanding even of the scripture. So when our minds are not clear, or our minds are are full of negative thoughts, and our perceptions are through this negative lens because we've not cleared that out. It is hard for us, our spiritual walk, to be as strong as it could be. And so I absolutely think that we should talk about physical health because it impacts our spiritual walk, no doubt, right? Our
Absolutely.
mental health impacts our spiritual walk. And so I think it has to be a part of the conversation much more than, once or twice a year. It needs to be incorporated.
Absolutely. And so speaking of that, I think that is a great segue into this next portion. When we convene, I want us to look at what the scripture says.
Yes.
What does the scripture say about depression and faith and how all of this comes together, right?
Right, right.
So
And how often we've actually seen some of
absolutely.
the people in scripture go through it, right?
Absolutely. So we're going to take this quick break, and when we come back, we're going to share with you guys some of our favorite scriptures, right?
Yes,
Right, Michelle? Some of our
yes,
favorite scriptures
yes.
that we believe can encourage the people of God as it relates to faith and depression and just our walk in this life in general.